Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Nancy Foley, the president of Morro Coast Audubon Society, and on behalf of MCAS Board, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's program. Tonight's program is Coexisting with Rattlesnakes on the Central Coast, a really relevant topic for right now. But before we begin, we have a few important announcements to share. First, mark your calendars for our October program, which will focus on dragonflies and how to attract them by creating a wildlife pond. That event, presented by Kathy Biggs, promises to reveal the fascinating world of these remarkable insects whose flight patterns and habits are as organized as they are beautiful. If you're curious about dragonflies, we encourage you to join us on October 20th for this special presentation. Now for a chapter update. We're actively working in the classrooms already, again through our Feather, which is fostering environmental awareness through high school education and research, and in the elementary schools through birding in your neighborhood programs. Our conservation committee is busy working on projects to foster conservation opportunities on properties throughout the community. And our outdoor outreach director is very busy with multiple community outreach events over the next couple of months. We have a great board and great volunteers to get all of these things accomplished. If you want to help with time or money, please reach out to us. Next, we have some field trip updates from our field trip coordinator, Robbie Revel. Robbie?
Thank you, Nancy. Well, you guys probably know migration is underway, and we all have a front row seat because we live on the Pacific Flyway. So we hope everybody's going to have a chance to get out during migration season. By going to Birdcast Migration Dashboard, I learned that 140,700 birds crossed San Luis Obispo County lines last night. And it is some of the birds that were predicted to be migrating was one was a black-polled warbler, which a few of our rare bird apps have been reporting by numerous bird chasers out there every day. And the redneck phalarope, which we saw a lot of on our last field trip. So if you're interested in the details, go to, again, Birdcast Migration Dashboard. We've had a lot of newcomers on the field trips recently, but we're hoping that we are serving everyone in the birding community well. We have 2 more field trips in September, and in October, we're going to celebrate the big day, the migration, Cornell's migration big day, by offering another boat cruise. And so that can accommodate about 20 people. So look for that. Coming up, a Atascadero Lake birding, Oso Flaco birding with Jessica Griffith, one of our favorites, Los Osos Oaks, Marl Strand shorebirds, Oceana Lagoon birding, and Sweet Springs Nature Preserve birding when the ducks are back. So I hope that we're going to see all of you on the birding trail. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Now for the program you've all been waiting for. Emily Taylor is a professor of biological sciences at Cal Poly, where she conducts research on the physiology, ecology, and conservation of reptiles and amphibians with her students. She's an author and rescuer of all creatures and the founder of Central Coast Snake Services. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we'll try to answer them at the end of the program. So please help me in welcoming Emily Taylor. Emily?
Wonderful. One moment. Let me get this sharing done right here. There we go. How does it look? Look okay?
Yeah, it looks great. Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I want to thank the Morro Coast Audubon Society for inviting me tonight. I'm really excited for a chance to do my first ever talk, actually, about Central Coast Snake Services. As a biology professor, I give lots of talks about rattlesnakes. including my research on rattlesnakes. But I've never given a talk actually on what we do with Central Coast Snake Services, which is something that I started on the side about 6 years ago because I saw a glaring need. And you're going to hear that story tonight about what need I saw and what I've been trying to do to help with this singular obsession I have, which is in my title, How to Help People Coexist with Rattlesnakes here on the Central Coast. And the spoiler, as you're going to see, is that my hope is that everyone can be as I am in the middle, smiling while they're watching that rattlesnake instead of either running, screaming in the other direction, or of course, God forbid, being bitten. And so I did want to start by saying, why is it that rattlesnakes have caught my fancy? And this is something I actually talk to people about a lot because rattlesnakes are, as you see on the left-hand side there, simultaneously extremely dangerous in the sense that lots of dogs are bitten by rattlesnakes. You can see that poor baby with his swollen face right there. He recovered just fine using optimal vet care, of course. And then people accidentally stepping on rattlesnakes, those types of things that can be very, very dangerous. And in fact, in many ways, rattlesnakes may be considered one of our most dangerous wildlife when bites do occur. That, of course, however, bites are actually extremely rare because rattlesnakes don't want to bite people. And then there's really this tension between how dangerous rattlesnakes can be and then how rattlesnakes act in nature. So on the right-hand side, there's a rattlesnake we found in Spooner's Cove, doing what rattlesnakes tend to do, which is really just minding its own business. And it's this tension between their danger and their gentleness that really makes me want to be an advocate for them. I like to think that me and a lot of other people who are rattlesnake advocates are trying to speak up for the most maligned animals, the animals that don't have a voice. When I was in college, I learned about all kinds of animals, including the beautiful birds that so many of you love so much. And it's easy to get a lot of people on the side of birds. It's not so easy to get people on the side of rattlesnakes. And so that is something that I try to do. And as you're going to see today with the story of Central Coast Snake Services, it's not even so much about getting people on the side of rattlesnakes. It's baby steps. It's showing people that there's a resource so they don't have to kill them. And that's where we come in at Central Coast Snake Services. So first of all, I started this about a year before the pandemic is when I started doing some snake safety training. And then during the pandemic, when I found myself at home with my sabbatical plans canceled, no teaching, and I had extra time on my hands, which is not something that college professors typically have. I haven't had it before or since. But I found myself with extra time. I started thinking, there's a lot of people who are finding snakes in their yards, especially during the pandemic when people were out in their yards more and walking around in nature more. They would see these rattlesnakes and they're freaking out. And they didn't have a resource about what to do. And so I'd like to everyone here to think, okay, you find this on your patio. By the way, this rattlesnake was found at a winery in Paso Robles last week. It was called into us. What do you do? And so we can kind of juxtapose what people maybe used to have to do or still would do if they don't know about Central Coast Snake Services versus what they can do now. And then the rest of the presentation today, I'm going to be going through and just showing you some photos and telling you some stories about some of the things we do, including our mostly free services, including this rattlesnake relocation that you're going to be hearing about. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some other rattlesnake things we do and how we're kind of involved and tied in tightly with the Cal Poly community. And then I'll stop early for questions because everybody, if I've learned one thing, everybody always has rattlesnake questions, and I'm really glad to answer those. Okay, so what do you do, right? Well, the first thing and the sad one is kill it. Every day, thousands and thousands of rattlesnakes around the country are being killed, usually finding themselves at the wrong end of a shovel because people are scared. Maybe they're misinformed. Maybe they feel like they don't have another choice. Some people actually feel like they're supposed to kill rattlesnakes, and this is partly because of cultural transmission of fear of snakes. So what their parents told them, what their grandparents told them, and also because of the way snakes are portrayed on TV and by the media. People love to be scared, right? We're coming up on Halloween. Think of people paying a lot of money to watch horror films and to get themselves scared. Fear sells, and the media knows this, and YouTubers know this, and so they like to portray snakes as being really scary and aggressive when the reality is just absolutely not the case. But as you're going to hear tonight, I'm not minimizing the danger of snake bite. Snake bite, while the risk of it happening to someone is relatively low, if it does happen, it's very, very severe. And so for that reason, there need to be other alternatives. Also, because it turns out that killing rattlesnakes is dangerous. So this happened back in 2018, and it happens other times as well. It's happened more than just once recently, where someone decapitated a snake and then they picked up the head. And sure enough, that decapitated head can bite the person for hours afterwards. So it's really dangerous to try to take on a rattlesnake, no matter how well you do it. So it's important for there to be someone else to deal with it for you. And, there's a better way than killing the snake. So what else would you do if you find this in your patio? Well, you could call the sheriff or animal control or 911, fill in the blanks. And I'm happy to tell you that if you do that here on the Central Coast, they're going to happily patch you on through to us. Because frankly, the sheriff and animal control have other things that they would rather do that are very important things that they need to do that are not dealing with rattlesnakes. And as you can imagine, most police officers, animal control officers would rather not deal with a rattlesnake. It's a very specialized set of skills. But in many other places where they don't have someone like Central Coast Snake Services, the sheriff or the animal control officer or firefighters might be dispatched out to deal with a snake. And what they do is across the board. Okay. We actually are doing some research at Cal Poly with my students right now on what happens when you call animal control. Well, here in San Luis Obispo, they'll call us. I've also trained them in case they have to go out on how to relocate rattlesnakes, but that's not true throughout much of the rest of California. It's highly variable. In some cases, animal control kills the snake. In some cases, they relocate it. In some cases, firefighters might do the same, or they might just put it on the other side of your fence where it can come right back. It's the Wild West in terms of what the kind of public officers will do if you call them about a rattlesnake in your yard. You never know. You could catch it and do it yourself. And some people are really brave and they want to do that. They learn how to catch a snake and how to relocate it about a quarter mile away, which is what you're going to hear is the best practice. Good for them. But of course, as you might imagine, that is not the majority of people. And so, there's other options. You could call a pest control company with something that is, billed to deal with rattlesnakes or, rodents. They could deal with all kinds of stuff. And again, the pest control companies are going to vary. A lot of them will kill the snake, and certainly some of them will relocate the snake, but they don't necessarily know what to do with a rattlesnake. So that's why calling us is really the key here, and why we're so pleased to provide this free resource where we provide free relocation services of rattlesnakes in all of San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties. Just no small feat, trust me. We have currently 22 people who I have trained who are ready and waiting throughout the two counties for a snake call. And a quick example is tonight there was a snake call out in Wasna. And because all the people who I have are, technicians who have other jobs and who are volunteering their time, the technician who could go was in Los Osos. And so it took them an hour round trip each way to go, an hour each way to go. So no easy task to do it. Oftentimes we can get there much quicker, usually within a few minutes, but in some cases when the animal is remote, it takes a little while. Okay, so what do? We do snake relocation or translocation, and we use evidence-based practices, meaning that we keep current on all of the studies that are done. Incidentally, many of these studies were done by me and my students at Cal Poly, where we would put radio transmitters inside snakes and put them different distances away from where they were captured to see how they do. And what happens is that rattlesnakes, when you relocate them a very short distance, they do fine. You're getting them out of the potential area of danger where there could be a dog or a person, and you're putting them somewhere within their home range where they know the area and they do well. If you put them too close by, like right on the other side of the fence, chances are they might come right back because they're attracted to something in that yard, which we'll talk about shortly. But if you take them many miles away, which initially seems like the best thing, it's not, turns out. Like if you take them 20 miles away to this beautiful canyon that has lots of rodents for them to eat and water and seems great, well, they don't like it. And that's because rattlesnakes know where their home is. Take them far away, they're going to be disoriented and they will try to navigate their way home, and they'll usually get picked off by a hawk, or they'll die of exposure, or they'll get run over by a car or something like that. So we use evidence-based approaches, which is to relocate that snake within a quarter mile to a half mile away, which is called the Goldilocks approach. That's my unofficial just right distance. It's not so close the snake's going to come right back, and it's not so far away that the snake does poorly. How do we know this? Again, we know it because of research we've done before. But in addition, all the snakes, which we do about 100 rattlesnakes a year here on the Central Coast, that we relocate, we take photos of their backs before relocating them. And the pattern on a rattlesnake of blotches is unique from individual to individual, just like your fingerprints are. So if that person ever has a rattlesnake coming to their home again, we can look and see, is it the same snake? And in 6 years of doing this, we've had one snake reappear at a home. So what we're doing is working. This rattlesnake here was another one that was out in Eastern County. It was this weekend. It was out by Lopez Lake. Here's a photo of the snake, obviously in a bad place under someone's car in their driveway. And then here's a photo of the snake being relocated or released. Now, this is the snake in the middle right here that you can see, and we're relocating it out away from people, very importantly, away from roads. This is the bucket that our technician caught it in. And so we feel like we're really doing something that is a win-win for people and for snakes. People can call us. They know that they don't have to pay for it because it turns out a lot of people don't want to pay for a rattlesnake's life. Could be some studies that were done on that. That'd be fascinating. But we do rely on donations. And so a lot of people do donate it. And our goal is to break even every year. So I'm not trying to make money off of this. I have the luxury of having another job. And then people who are my volunteers, I say volunteers, they're just not official employees. They're actually paid between $50 and $150 per snake for doing what they do. And again, our goal is to break even. So I feel like we have a really good model going on here on the Central Coast. All right, so here's what our website looks like. I put some QR codes up throughout the presentation and also some websites in the bottom right so that if you want to take photos of those or link to those on your cell phone, you can keep track. But ultimately, I'm going to be giving you a website at the end that everything will link back to. So it shows you some of the services that we do here, and we're going to be talking about those today. First and foremost is the snake hotline right there, 805-401-0811. And that's an important one because you can call that 24/7 and you're usually going to get me. Right now, my husband has it because I'm doing something else right now. But usually it's going to be me. Occasionally, if I go out of the country on vacation, one of my graduate students at Cal Poly will have it, or one of my awesome volunteers who knows a lot about rattlesnakes. And the first thing that we do is free snake identification. So someone can just text or call anytime with a photo of a snake. Maybe they're just curious. Maybe you're even on vacation with your family and you just want to know what that snake is. Absolutely, we're glad to find out what that is for you. So all you need is a photo of the snake and the location that you're in. We'll tell you what the snake is. And of course, if it's a rattlesnake in that person's yard, then we'll say, okay, well, do you need assistance with that? And we'll come and we'll remove and relocate that rattlesnake. In addition, we do rattlesnake safety training, we do property inspections, we do dog training, we do all kinds of stuff that I'm going to show you now as we continue on here. But what I wanted to start with is showing you some photos from our Instagram. So everyone here should follow us on Instagram. We're also on Facebook and X. And the reason you should follow us is because we post a photo of every single rattlesnake that we catch and relocate. And the important thing about that is that if you follow us along on social media, you'll see when the rattlesnakes are active. Furthermore, the photos that we post are almost always in situ photos, meaning this is what the snake looked like when the technician showed up to arrive. So here's that one just the other day that was under someone's car. Here's another one on a porch in San Luis Obispo. This one right here I told you was from a winery in Paso, and so on and so forth. Occasionally the snake will be moving quick enough that we have to just catch it and put it in the bucket, and here's our photo that we get to get the pattern. You'll notice that there's one snake here that also doesn't match the rest of them, which is this gopher snake. And gopher snakes, like every other species of non-rattlesnake in California, is a totally harmless snake. It's harmless to people and to pets. We get lots of calls about gopher snakes, and mainly we try to talk people into letting them live on their property. Gopher snakes are great neighbors to have around. As their name implies, they eat lots of gophers. The reason we were called out for this gopher snake in Atascadero is because what you can't see is that its head was caught in that garden netting up there. And so we're actually rescuing that snake, which is another service that we provide also for free. So following us on at Coast Snake helps you to learn about what rattlesnakes do and why they do it, because we don't show those false photos of rearing up rattlesnakes trying to strike at the camera, which are honestly snakes that have been provoked. Those are snakes that are terrified. When a rattlesnake is rattling, that's its way of using its voice to scream in terror. Rattlesnakes don't have the ability to shout. They don't have good hearing. They have a rattle, and that's what they're saying when they're rattling is, I am terrified. Okay, so here's some images that can help you to understand why rattlesnakes might go into your yard. And it's very, very, very simple. If a rattlesnake goes into a yard, part of it is just luck, bad luck in some people's cases. They might think that. In most people's cases, even I like rattlesnakes a lot. I still don't want them in my yard even. You know, I've got a dog. I understand. And the rattlesnakes are moving through the yard, especially the yards of people who live near open spaces. But if they take up shop and they hang out for a little while, it's because those yards are providing one or more of three key things. The first thing is water. This photo was taken, I believe, in Templeton. A rattlesnake was hanging out and drinking the water that was coming, dripping out of an AC unit. Think about it. Rattlesnakes haven't had a drink unless they happen to find a creek or a pond since like March or April, the last time it rained appreciably here on the Central Coast. They're desperately, desperately thirsty, especially in these drought years. They're looking for your irrigation water, pool water, bird bath water. All those things are going to attract all wildlife, including rattlesnakes. And of course, food is a huge one. Rattlesnakes are just major, major carnivores. They eat rodents. Primarily, they're going to be eating things like California ground squirrels, kangaroo rats, but also small rabbits like this one that you see here. And rodents tend to congregate in areas where there's people, especially in areas where there's livestock. And then finally, I call it low shade or low to the ground shade, little nooks and crannies where snakes can hide and get away from things. That's where snakes like to go. So if there's porches or crawl spaces, if people have yards where they keep piles of debris, firewood, those types of things are all going to attract rattlesnakes. And so on my website, if you go to centralcoastsnakeservices.com, I've written articles, I've given presentations like this, but slightly different topics on how to live safely in rattlesnake country, how to make your yard less attractive to rattlesnakes, those types of things. And of course, a hint for those of you who want to make your yard more attractive to rattlesnakes, just provide more water, more cover, more things for rodents, right? Most of you don't want that though. Okay, so here's some photos of just a few select, like I said, we do about 100 a year, photos of recent rattlesnake relocations. I already told you about this one where the rattlesnake was actually under the car, and the rattlesnake was called in by a person who we know out in Rio Grande. And she, just like everyone else who calls in, was instructed to keep an eye on the snake. So that's what happens when you call in for a rattlesnake in your yard. We say, keep an eye on the snake because they're very sneaky. We don't want it to slither away and not be able to find it when we get there. By the time we got in there, the snake had crawled into the crawl space under the home, which of course is a nightmare to get him out of. We were able to get it out of the crawl space for the client. Again, this is all free, which I think is pretty remarkable, given that we pay thousands of dollars a year to get people to come and, I don't know, trap rodents out of our yards, or some people pay for people to kill spiders outside their yard, things like that. Removing an actually venomous animal that, by the way, is a very noble animal that deserves to live. You know, they live for decades. They have complex social lives, like we've said, for free, I think is a pretty cool service. That's why I'm so proud of what we do. Here's one where the person got 2 for 1. They found this huge rattlesnake in their yard, sat there watching it, called it in. And when the technician came, they looked around, they found another one, a small one. In this case, it was not a brand new baby. So that's not a mom with a baby. If you look carefully at that, you can see an extra rattle segment. So that was a baby that was born last year. It just turned out that rattlesnakes like this person's yard down in Santa Barbara. And so it's good to call us because we also will look around a little bit for other rattlesnakes. Here's one in San Luis Obispo recently in a really nice and neat yard that I wanted to show you something that I thought was fascinating. So this little black blob right there is the rattlesnake. This was a great scenario because the family has a bunch of young children, and they had taught their children well because the kids saw the rattlesnake and ran inside and told the parent, which is exactly what they should do. And they called us and we were able to take it up the hill and release it. But I also thought it was interesting because that box there, of course, is a rodent bait station. And sometimes rattlesnakes can eat the poison bait or eat a poisoned rodent inside those, which is kind of ironic if you think about it. I'm sure that you folks who think about birds a lot know what I'm talking about, that we're actually poisoning, in some cases, the predators that would otherwise be killing the rodents to begin with. And so we're very, very excited to be able to help by removing those rattlesnakes. Here's a few more. This one recently was uncovered down in Lompoc where someone pulled the paint, their paint tarp out, and a rattlesnake had taken up residence underneath there. So that's never good, of course, for a working area. Anything that's on the ground that a rattlesnake can hide under, it's going to do that. A rattlesnake inside someone's home, that happens not too often, but it does happen. And of course, that's a major emergency because rattlesnakes don't belong inside people's homes. Full stop. That's just dangerous. And then we also deal with very, very specialized situations. So this was an Atascadero call last summer where a mother rattlesnake was observed in a ground squirrel hole right along the driveway of the home with her brood of brand new babies. And this is very sensitive because rattlesnake mothers give live birth. They don't lay eggs, and they actually care for and protect their young for a period of time of about at least 1 or 2 weeks following birth. So it's very sensitive because the babies are born with this kind of layer of, kind of cloudy skin covering their eyes, and they're very vulnerable to predators. So we don't want to separate them. So we actually went in and we sat there for hours. We put a GoPro in front of the hole, we counted the babies from a distance to make sure we didn't miss any of them. So we're really coming at this with the goal, first and foremost, of helping people out for free by reducing this risk of this animal that's in their yard, but also saying we can optimize the situation for the snake and put this mom and her babies in a place that's safer for them. In this case, I brought them home. I let the babies all shed with the mom, which is what would happen in the wild, and then release them all together in a better area a few days later. So rattlesnake relocation is mainly what we do. That's our main goal. If it's a harmless snake, like a king snake or a gopher snake, we're going to tell people they should leave the snake there. And we're going to try to convince them. And I think we do a pretty good job of doing that. But in some cases, the snake is in trouble. So in a lot of cases, the snake might be trapped. It might be caught up in some sort of trap that is meant to keep out something else. And so I'm going to give you some examples of those. And I know that this will resonate with many of you, especially you bird fans, because birds will get caught in these too. So here was an example of when we actually had 2 gopher snakes that were caught in this bird netting. The good news here is that you can see that that bird netting has already been cut down. The people, usually when people find that there's snakes or other wildlife that are caught in their garden netting, they remove it because they do not want to have that garden netting. They didn't know that there was going to be wildlife trapped in there. Because of course, if the sun hits these snakes, they would die of exposure. Luckily, we were able to cut both of those out and they were just fine. Sometimes it's a rattlesnake, which can be really scary, cutting a rattlesnake out of garden netting. Or in this case, you can see this rattlesnake that got itself caught in this fence here. And of course, the head is right by where it's caught. Those are a job that frankly, no one else would be able to do without killing the snake. This is a highly specialized job, getting a snake out of a trap or out of a stuck situation. And we specialize in doing that as well. So we can see what happens when these animals, like this gopher snake here, are caught in this netting. Sometimes they're caught and we just have to cut them out. Sometimes they're caught and they're injured because the netting has torn their skin, in which case I will either take them to Pacific Wildlife Care where they get rehabilitated, or especially in the case of a rattlesnake, I will do it myself. I have basic veterinarian training. I'm not a veterinarian, but I got my PhD from a veterinarian. And so he trained me how to do basic surgeries. I'm qualified and I have the equipment to be able to do minor skin sutures and so on. Otherwise, I will take them to a veterinarian for expert care. Glue traps. Glue traps are probably my least favorite thing in the world right now because so many non-target species get caught in it. And even the targets, the rodents that are caught in it, that's not a way for the rodent to go. Please do not use glue traps or baited poison if you're trying to control rodents. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir right now, but still very, very important. So we will carefully remove snakes from those and rehabilitate them. And of course, it's not just gopher snakes and rattlesnakes. We get these California king snakes, which in case you didn't know, California king snakes are major predators of everything that people don't like, including rodents, but also rattlesnakes and other snakes. So we'll go up and climb up into the eaves and remove these. So we're doing this constantly all the time. Again, if a snake is in trouble, we do this at no charge. We've got all these people driving all around the 2 counties to rescue these animals that many people don't believe are worthy of rescue, and we do in spades. Okay, and so here's a little interlude. We get special cases too, where maybe it's not even a native snake. A few years ago on New Year's Day, we got a call from some people in Mustang Village at Cal Poly about a gopher snake, excuse me, a gopher snake, was not a gopher snake, a boa constrictor someone had thrown in the dumpster. And this is the boa constrictor who had an injury on her face where the skin was all gone, all the way down to her brain case. And it was full of maggots too, the poor animal. She was dehydrated. I don't know if you can see this here, but her mouth is full of mouth rot, which is a terrible bacterial infection. Well, we caught her and we rushed her to the veterinarian. Big shout out to Dr. Maxwell Kahn, who is our local exotic veterinarian in Pismo Beach. We did a fundraiser online. We were able to fully fund all her veterinary care. And because of my wonderful husband, who twice a day would clean her wounds and clean out her mouth, this was her just a few months later, healing up there. You can see, oh, this is the only area now here that's open. And then now, years later, she looks even better than this, where, you know, my mom calls her Uggy, is her name, like she's ugly because of that scar. And I just think she's the most beautiful thing ever. And of course, this whole process of us saving and rehabilitating, and of course, then adopting this beautiful animal that we take out to outreach events, caused my husband to fall in love with the snake he cared for. He named her Baby. And this is him hanging out with his girlfriend, Baby, the boa constrictor. So we try to take care of all of these animals that otherwise would be euthanized. So just so you know, before I move on to the other services that we do, is that if anyone's watching and they don't live in San Luis Obispo or Santa Barbara counties, there is a resource for free snake relocation that has hundreds of people around the country and even up in Canada who are willing to come for free and not charge someone. Everyone takes tips, everyone gladly takes donations. A lot of people are having a lot of money in gas bills, veterinary bills for rehabilitation, all kinds of stuff. They're willing to do this, and they're willing to do this on their own time in support of these animals that are probably the most maligned of basically any vertebrate that I can think of. So 3 cheers to all of the volunteers who do this.